Stacy. All right. Here in Bethlehem, we have a advisory council that meets once a month. And we have various subjects that come before us we've got about 22 members of community members, and the subjects vary. And we had a member that brought a subject to us about, I call it harassment in general, but it really implied it was race and hate related. And so we sat down in our meetings and we discussed that and sent off into a subcommittee to put together some language where we could address the subject for community. And we did that in depth. And that was brought back to us from the subcommittee. And the committee in general voted to put together a petition that we might present to community for assistance and getting a message out to everyone in and around us that there is no place for hate in Bethlehem or surrounding communities. And so that we did. We put together, that petition was put together and is now generating throughout Bethlehem and various areas. It is also on the computer. I have to ask Jessica, what is that change.org? It is on there so people can sign up on the computer. So I think we're going to an extensive application for folks to sign up. Everyone, as we know, doesn't agree with us and probably won't sign the petition, but then they have to live with themselves as they have for the last 1,000 years. But that in general gives an assessment of just what a small committee can do coming together and discussing subjects that affect our community.
Thank you. And just to advise you, the director of communications, Laura Argent-Bright, she actually posted your petition on our Facebook page as well. So hopefully that'll get some traction there as well. This is a general question. And we can have a few people chime in and answer this. What issues has your council, and this President Lee, you can answer it, and again, anyone else, feel free to add or answer as well. What issues has your council observed? I know you've had to address this issue, and there were some other issues that President Lee and I have discussed, but what have you all seen that has really resonated with you and has come across as, some really pressing challenges that you all need to tackle?
Okay, I'm going to answer one. Homelessness is one that's really we've tacked on to, and at every meeting we've got a breakout, and homelessness is one of the subjects that we're discussing intensively.
Okay.
We find that in the city, I keep hassling the administration about dollars, but it's also space, because we try to work together, so rather than to say nobody wants to have it happen, it's because, there's an allocation of space we're talking about tiny houses that might become available. I don't know if Bob Rapp got on this meeting yet or not, but he is the chair for that particular aspect of our work.
Okay.
Food insecurity.
Esther, okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to add about food insecurity. That's also another area that we're dealing with as well.
Yeah.
I would say, if I may say, Esther, in addition to homelessness, I think the discrimination of education in an urban environment compared to suburban. I believe that education today is a civil rights issue, and we really need more funding for urban education throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to help cities like Bethlehem and Allentown and Reading and all the urban core where you don't really have that much of a tax base. So I think, education is a very important issue that we've discussed, obviously the homelessness. And I also think that, food insecurity, I do agree with the rabbi, that's important because, we're looking at affordable housing, and during this pandemic, we have found that rents have increased, and many people that are on the lower scale have difficulty finding apartments now, even that they're able to, rent. So it's just not one issue. I think we're looking at a combination of several issues.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Good.
And I see, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Hi, this is Janine. I also want to add, because it kind of coincides with all of this. I know Latino Leadership Alliance has been talking about kind of the narrative that we have about these communities as well. So our Latino, Latinx residents, if there's a fire on the South Side, right, and there are 2 children there, and oftentimes the narrative is like, well, this parent wasn't present when this fire happened. And so the narrative is on these Latinx families are not taking care of their own and this fire happened. Whereas we look at things like housing, we're looking at the kinds of housing they're in. If they are in housing where these, things like fire safety and the very things they're using, like the stove, are these things really safe? Are they in a space that is really meant for one family, and is it being shared by multiple families? And so some of these, the way the narratives, the way the media portrays certain types of communities, when what they're given is not substantial for living. So that ties in with homelessness, that ties in with access to food, access to things, right? So I think as we talk about these things, the way we talk about them is really important as well.
Thank you for that. I would agree. And thank you all for your responses. I see in the chat, Mary Elizabeth Connor stated that police presence in the community is another area of concern. And she's giving kudos to Chief of Police, Dr. Cott. She said there are consistent strides being made in that area in the city of Bethlehem. So it sounds like you all know what the issues are that your community is presented with, and you're doing the necessary things to address those. I just like to add that the educational gap and issues with education is a pressing concern, and we have a committee that discusses that regularly. So we could definitely collaborate with you all, because that's just a problem across the state that we are really trying very hard to address. So thank you all for those remarks. Did anyone else want to comment before I moved on?
Yes, please. You see, from the community, obviously, from the holistic whole perspective, apparently, we need like fairness and openness, while access rights and possibility to all this like equal housing and quality food matters, also education. But also, we are so concerned about this ethnic racial bias currently actually going on, not just in our community, but also actually it's surrounding the whole nation, which basically it's very painful. It's harming not just to the core, but also it's hit to the bottom of this economical and educational issues. Because when you have the bias and you set up like barriers or specific task force against a specific ethnic originality, and you are talking about actually you are creating privileges for certain small groups, and which is not the right way to do, obviously. And this causes a lot of issues, because based on my understanding, I came here already 33 years. Around 10-15 years ago, right? And when I go to the city and I talk with people, or even with the older classmates, and doesn't matter the origin of your ethnicity, you have the chances to do whatever import export you wish for, and you have freedom while to access to all the resources is so open. Now, because of all this bias, we set up the barriers, and end up a lot of fellows, they don't even have the chances to have access to the correct information, and which is very important when they make like a business judgment. And this is going to affect communities' job, quality job, resources, and opportunities also. And this is very bad. And that's what we are facing now. It's only the very privileged few people that have that capacity or availability to reach out to all this very narrow the channel, because we made it narrow. It's no longer like it's very open to all the fellows equally and fairly, which is wrong. So we might have to do something and look into this perspective also. It's very hurting. It's very hurting to everybody, and it's wrong.
Yes, I agree. And one of the things that we did in this initiative was to be very clear about the positive vision that we have for Bethlehem. So we not only acknowledge the trouble that you're mentioning, but we wanted to put forward the positive of how we step forward, how we deal with this issue, right? How do we go about presenting at least the vision for the type of city we want, and in essence, a microcosm of the type of country we want, right? Which is a place that respects and is loving and, you know, values and cherishes people and gives them the opportunity, no matter who they are or their, you know, physical, mental, racial, ethnic, a religious background, to be able to recognize and call this place home and to build a stronger community within it. And that's why we were very careful not only to state the problems, but also to put forward a positive vision of how we would like to see going forward. And I think that's really important, because we have to give people hope that we can change.
Right, exactly.
Thank you both. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Any other comments? So we're going to move on to, I guess.
Stacey, I would just add to that, you know, because Rabbi Singer and Sophia are correct, but we can't leave out the fact, I can't let it pass without, we don't want to eliminate African Americans who have been here and served, and we're looking for a wholesomeness, you know, for all of us, but include everybody. The rabbi is speaking correctly, but we want all of us to come together and you know, and cut back this racial bias. You know, Sophie is understanding correctly, but there's so much bias toward one another. But let's be inclusive and try. And sometimes I don't think we work hard enough for colored, Negro, African American people, because we seem to be so content. You know, and particularly in Bethlehem, we don't cause any rows. And we just live contented, you know, doing employment, doing what we can, what's acceptable to others, not necessarily to us, but to others, that we make a livelihood. But I think there has to come together a relationship where we're all accepted. And Janine has got this new post here of inclusion and equity, and I think it's well said that. Hopefully through this group, that and all of us working together, that we can make Bethlehem a better place to live. I just can't let it, you know, without saying that.
Okay. So I think this is a perfect segue into this question. In addition to the petition, are there any visions that you all have in regards to how to address white supremacist behaviors? And that definitely could be a question for anyone in the panel. I definitely would love to hear someone who is in one of the police departments speak to that as well, but it can be answered by anyone.
I can start on that one. One of the things, William Reynolds here, Mayor-elect of Bethlehem, is that I agree with what everybody had said before. And one of the things that I think we're looking at is, how do we take action? How do we do things that respond to these problems and these issues that we know have been going on? And there's a lot of people on this call that have been doing this work a lot longer than I have. And one of the things the pandemic did was it really showed how many of these issues were systemic. and how many of these issues were structural in our community. And I have often said that a lot of people agree on what the problem is, but coming up with those practical solutions is a more difficult step to take. And one of the things that we're doing in my office and in our office is that we did create that position to have Janine come on board to work in our administration to be the Director of Equity and Inclusion. And one of the things that I respect the most about Janine is her community connections and her ability to come up with what are some solutions we can take? How can we take a look at these systemic issues and come up with different solutions that will mobilize our community and take a look at what are things that we can do that maybe we haven't done before? Because I always think there's a wide chasm between us agreeing on what the problem is, on us even maybe agreeing on what the solution is, and seeing any type of progress, whether or not it's metrics or whether or not it's data or whatever that might be. But I've said for a year or two that we needed that Director of Equity and Inclusion to be within the mayor's office, right next to the mayor, because if we're going to be serious about these issues and coming out of the pandemic, we need to take a look at them from a structural point of view. And I will sign any petition. I will always show up to any protest, but it's got to be deeper than that. It's got to be, who are we hiring? What are we doing in our community that will create these systems long after our administration is gone that will really start to chip away at these systemic problems?
Thank you, Mayor-elect Reynolds. I would agree with you. And I'll just add, since Executive Director Lassiter could not be able to attend, what we always advocate for is similar to what you just said. I think the petition is a great start. Kudos President Lee and the rest of the council, because it's really the initiating of a call to action to start setting into motion some actions, to start acting upon what it is that needs to be done to address and tackle these issues, including but not limited to white supremacy. So hats off to all of you all for actually recognizing the problem and starting to, act on it in other ways, like Mayor-elect Reynolds said, seeing where other actions can be taken to address problems that are very difficult to address, very serious problems. Anyone else want to add?
Hi, Stacy. Lieutenant Slayton here with the Pennsylvania State Police. Good
Hello.
evening, everyone. Thank you for the PHRC for hosting this forum. My name is Lieutenant William Slayton, and I'm the hate and bias type crime specialist for the Pennsylvania State Police. With regard to any white supremacy activity in your area, it has to be reported. It has to be reported so we can document it, we can investigate it, and we've offered a number of resources to multiple police agencies throughout the state to help them better investigate some of these crimes. So I would encourage anyone who feels victim of any type of white supremacist activity, propaganda flyers, things of that sort, we monitor and track all that information. So you have to report it to us so we can investigate it, and you could potentially be preventing a worse crime from occurring. In addition to that, our office provides training to local law enforcement officers on how to investigate and recognize hate crimes, because hate crimes are not always as overt as you think. Sometimes some of these hate groups use coded messages that the average person and sometimes the average police officer doesn't recognize. So if at any time anyone in the city of Bethlehem or surrounding area needs resources from the Pennsylvania State Police, you can reach out to us at the Heritage Affairs section.
What kind of, Lieutenant?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, here, what kind of protection do we get, for reporting a crime, a hate crime? There are other factions and other ends to this. It's more than just reporting something to you. Who protects us when we, not that I have one to give you, but if we did, how do we know we're going to be?
So there are mechanisms in place because this is a live broadcast. I can't kind of expand on that,
Okay.
but there are protections for the victim. I can assure you of that. There are protections.
Okay, that's important.
It is. I agree because, I'm sorry.
We'll get to it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Hate crimes, victims of hate crimes, they're reluctant to report them. People contact me almost on a monthly basis about hate crimes, and I try to encourage them to the best of my ability to report them but they're just reluctant of, they don't want to be, seen as outcasts. They don't want to be embarrassed and things of that sort. But you have to report it so we can investigate and arrest the person so they don't harm someone else or do something worse the next time. We've seen some of these shootings that have occurred in the state that were hate and race related, and it's a tragedy. So I encourage all victims of hate crimes to contact us, contact the PHRC, and we can help walk you through it.
Lieutenant
Slayton. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say, like we had, for example, at Lafayette College, just this past week, swastika carved into an elevator at the college. We had last few months before, in the sort of almost in May, I guess, we had an incident at right here at Moravian College, where a classroom was desecrated with all kinds of hateful messages. These things, we have obviously flyers that are being distributed by groups like the Patriot Front, but between our local police and the state police, how is their communication that these things are happening, and is there feedback between the two?
So the local police, if they need assistance with their investigation, they will reach out to us and let us know. Without them reaching out to us, we would not know about that hate crime. Or, if you as a community leader were to contact us as well and say, hey, this occurred at our school, the local police are investigating, can you reach out to them and see if they need some resources with regard to their investigation? That's how we can get involved as well. I'm not familiar with that agency. I don't know what type of training or experience they have regarding hate crimes, but some agencies in the state are not exposed to hate crimes on a frequent basis, so they often don't know the appropriate charges to file and things of that sort. So that's where we come in at. But again, if you as a community leader are made aware of something like that, even if you report it to the local police agency, you can still let me know, and I can reach out to them and offer assistance.
Rabbi, if I can add as well, so even though technically your synagogue is not in the city of Bethlehem, when stuff, especially when it's hate crime related, occurs in our area, we have an intelligence officer that collaborates and partners with not only our federal, state, and other local agencies. So there are definitely law enforcement partnerships that exist and are there to share and disseminate that information. And Ms. Waters, I'll throw my 2 cents in if you don't mind. Number one, and I think everyone has touched on it, acknowledge that there's a problem. Don't try to pretend that it's something that occurred, in the past. Acknowledge that there's a problem here and reach out to your community stakeholders and work together. And from a law enforcement perspective, share that information together. We are stronger together. And when we're sharing information that we have, where we're able to identify these individuals, monitor their activity, and keep tabs on them, that's the way we're going to get better as a community, working together.
I have a question. Is anybody from Bethlehem Township included on this commission? I live in Bethlehem Township, not in Bethlehem City, and I've had KKK things, and my neighbors have left in my yard. So and I went to the local police, and the local police said, that happens all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're a victim of that, that was very frightening, very, very frightening.
And Chief Bencoast.
I talked to an officer. My neighbors who are Black got one in their driveway, and I'm Jewish, and I got one in my driveway, and other neighbors didn't get them. So, and the literature from this group was specifically targeted for Black and for Jews. So they obviously knew who we were. And our police in Bethlehem Township, or this officer that the 4 of us, 2 couples, went up to the township police to talk to, wouldn't do anything.
Listen.
it was scary for a while, you know?
Yeah.
So I would love to see a Bethlehem Township officer included in this commission if that's possible. I mean, I'm
Well,
new
it's
to
not-
the commission, so I don't know.
Well, I sent you a flyer simply because this is for anyone that we asked to join. And our county executive is on this call, and he's Northampton County. And
Right.
you're in Northampton County. And so we're all part of this one group. And so Chief Pancos, and it's not foreign to me that happens in the township, because there are other Black families that had been affected in the past. And it took them 4 years to get some action because of officers like the one you talked to. But we finally got some action. So, but if you'll come and let us know, and as the lieutenant has indicated, but come through Chief Pancos because he's your chief.
Yeah, this was pre-pandemic. And
Still there.
I just wanted to know if those are the kinds of things that you're considering as a hate crime, Lieutenant Slayton, leaving literature like that.
So unfortunately, it's not illegal to leave hate-related literature like propaganda. But if they target a specific individual, then that may be a crime. Something that would have to be looked into a little bit further. But again, we offer free training to local law enforcement officers. We've trained about 4,000 officers to date in multiple subjects that's around cultural competency. So Ms. Lee or anyone else on this call can feel free to reach out to us and we could discuss some training initiatives for local law enforcement.
For the township, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. Sorry to hear about your experience.
Okay, Randy, we'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, may I say something?
Ching, okay. I mean, they're
Thank you.
they're up in Harrisburg. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, President Lee, and hello, everyone. And my name is Qing, and we are a ethnic Chinese family residing in Easton. I have to share some emergency situation about the crime of hate about my dad. My dad's name is Wei Zhao. He is 81-year-old physicist, and he is wrongfully jailed in Pennsylvania SCI Weimar owing to the hate. And he came to America just want to visit his grandchildren, and he is hardworking taxpayer here, paying around 3,200 of tax bills on time every year here. And he is currently in a single cell of SCI Weimar, and the jail shut down his heating supply for 13 days already, while the White House held summit of democracy. And he is also not allowed to freely call his family. And it is a severe human rights violation, and it is a crime of hate. And I assume that currently every one of you is sitting in such nice room provided with heating system, but please think about such 81-year-old innocent elder without his freezing cold while his heating system is turned off by jail, and he does not have the winter coat either. So please help.
If you don't mind, and by all means, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to address this, but I think that I might be able to assist. So if I can start, Ching, I apologize for what you're recounting to everyone. I actually came over from Department of Corrections. So if you could, and I think that I sent you a message. I sent you my email address. Can you please email me and leave me your phone number, and I will put you, and I will relay. I can see if I can get in.
We called the jail many times and they do
Right.
not.
I think I can get in contact with people outside of the actual institution. I can see if I can connect you with someone from the central office, okay? So
He is
please leave me your
81,
email
yeah.
address. And if any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he is innocent, and he is
Okay.
81-year-old, and yeah, he is freezing cold there.
Okay. I'm so sorry to hear that. And even if you want to stay on after we end, I will give you my contact information, okay? And if I don't know if anyone else has anything to add, but I just thought I could help her in that.
And we come to America because we was told it is a very friendly place when we was in China. Is anyone feel our pain? And I have the pain cancer now. Is anyone feeling our pain? Our family pain just because of such a crime of hate. My father is innocent. He is an innocent man and he has been a good man when he was in China and for 70 years.
Casey,
Yes.
listen, I just to let you know, I've been in contact directly with the superintendent at Waymart in behalf of Ching's father. And there have been some things going on there. But if you can talk to somebody at the central office, I think it needs that attention. Because
Okay.
they keep swinging him from single cell to general population. And he doesn't speak an ounce of English and is being taken advantage of. So any helps that we can do in that regard, our
Okay.
local NACP through me has been in contact directly several times with the superintendent.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
they know me by name. So
I think and I don't think we got too specific, but I remember us talking about
yes,
that
yes,
particular institution.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
my
and
By the way, can I say something? I believe, we believe this Wei Wuzhao's matters. It's actually, well, it's the victim of China hate and anti-China propagandas, which is very bad. It ought to be fixed right away. And this sort of China hate and anti-China propagandas, it's not just bifurcating this country, and they are creating privileged group of peoples, and which is wrong and very, very wrongful. And currently, why we see so many violence and all this not just in action, but also in this social medias, it's basically, well, the whole direction is wrong, and people behind this, they are trying to create all this hatred. We don't want to see this. It ought to be fixed, and it might come from outside. It's not even from our community.
you said it's from outside, Miss C?
Yes,
Okay,
it's
so
from outside.
okay, this is a perfect segue, and this is a question for all three people can answer, or or even two of you can answer. What are some of the best practices to address forms of hate in the community? And I know that Ms. C is speaking about experiences that she has observed or even heard about in the community in regards to Chinese people. Am I correct? But this is a bigger picture, as we've heard. This is extending to all types of people who are not of the majority. So
yes.
let's talk about best practices.
You see, it's based on the facts we observed in the past, 4 or 5 years. we have people has been circulating all this like ethnic, the conflict between all different ethnic, and people who send out these fake materials, fake news, disinformation. That could be from outside of our own society. It could be from overseas.
I hear you.
And when they came in, you look at the picture, they look like even, well, like me or like you or like someone else, or even like President, Biden. But actually, they are the specific people call them as like cyber warriors. And these cyber warriors, they try to create conflict inside of our community. And when people, they discover and then breed up, they put them, well, they use crime against those people with the social medias. It's horrible. And
so
when we
don't mind,
so when
let me stop you for a second, because I think I can appreciate where you're coming from. Let's talk about best practices. Let me just, before anyone even starts and begins to weigh in, I want to go back, revisit what Mayor-elect Reynolds had said, that there are actually action steps being taken. So I think Ms. C very eloquently, very passionately brought it to us what she has seen. So let's talk about what we're going to do. What action steps? Let's talk about best practices. Anyone want to start with best practices to address?
I'll start, but I also I see Rabbi Levy's hand. Rabbi Levy, did you want to say something, or do you mind if I jump in with the best practice?
I think we're probably on the same wavelength. My question was really towards Lieutenant Slayton and others about how to be proactive, right? In terms of, we know that these hate groups are here, and not just to react to the things that they do, but how to prepare and insulate other people and groups, because I think what we're seeing is how they try to infiltrate groups and organizations and many well-meaning people, and to insert their kind of racism and bigotry. And it's not always obvious to people unless they're like, brandishing a SWAT sticker or using the N-word, that these people are white supremacists, right? And so how to make the general public more aware and sophisticated of the methods they're using, right? And that's why I think Rabbi Singer, the anti-Semitic poster that you had, the contents of that needs to be distributed more broadly, so that people can see, oh, this is what the white supremacists are advocating, and they can see if they are absorbing this message in their own, activities. And then when they realize that they're spouting some of the same talking points of these white supremacist groups, then they'll recognize it. Specifically, I'm talking about is like, attacks on diversity in general, attacks at school boards on diverse curriculums designed to educate people at younger ages about the diversity of our community, about different groups of people, not just African-American, but Jewish, Asian, Hispanic. And as we try to get these books into the curriculum, the opposition to that, some of the people are well-meaning, but others, they are using, social anxiety, economic anxiety to infiltrate that. I see this in some of the debate about critical race theory and woke culture, and they exploit some legitimate concerns that people have and use that as a way to radicalize, as a way to recruit people from these communities, and then get them into more, kind of hardcore white supremacist groups, that how they do that. So that's why, I was hoping, that we could be proactive and preparing people. If you hear people coming like this into your political organization, into your religious organization, into your academic communities, that this could be a cover sometimes for white supremacists in terms of how they act, how they're recruiting and infiltrating.
I agree. I think community education is key, as well as community support. once you know about these groups and their motives and how they try to promulgate their message, then you could better avoid it. And community support as well. We just had an instance in Berks County, PA, where there was some Patriot Front activity, and they vandalized a No Place for Hate mural. So right after that, the local ACP chapter and multiple community activists got together and marched and denounced it and said it wasn't going to be tolerated. And in addition to that, the community hosted a forum in which I was there. They want to know more about the group that was in their area and what the group represents and how they can, support their community and show that this is not acceptable. So I think community education is key, and then coming together, all different races, colors, ethnicities, saying, this is our community. We are not going to tolerate this in our community, and you are not welcome here. So I think those two things are key in trying to prevent this. When they go into a community and they see it's diverse and the communities together supporting each other, then they're more inclined to turn around and go to a different community that doesn't have such a robust community network.
And to build on that, I would add that one of the most proactive things we can do is by learning about each other's different ethnicities, cultures, religions, by coming together to learn to not only respect, but to understand each other. So we need ways of building bridges across the community, opportunities for celebrating our diversity, for being able to be exposed to different ideas and different cultures and ethnicities and different foods and all different things that make our city great because it has such diversity. We need to break down the silos that we are often in, both religious and cultural, in order to be able to appreciate each other's beauty. And that's something, building those bridges goes a long way to understanding each other and to standing with each other.
Thank you all. Very well said.
Ms.
And
this is
go ahead.
Janine. Hi,
Yeah.
I wanted to echo what Rabbi Singer was saying, absolutely. And I know Chief Cott in the chat, she also said, and hiring practices. And so what I want to just kind of emphasize on is all of these points, and also that we don't just need diversity, we need diversity with power behind it. And so when I think about that, I think about the hiring practices and how, right now we're talking about very overt white supremacist actions, but we see them all the time in our nonprofits where we have Black, Latinx, Jewish, all these people from different groups. They are in positions, they have titles, they are directors, they are people that you would consider, supervisors, positions of power. But the way the organization is organized, they are not able to use their power in effective ways. And oftentimes they are nitpicked. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? So you technically check off this box for diversity, but in the end, you have people that are not given the power to do their jobs effectively. And I think that's part of white supremacy, is you still have people, these people that are all white, all male boards. You have people that are in control where you use folks as a check mark, but they're not really given true power. And so if we want to say that we have representation on our, on staffs in universities or at the library or City Hall or wherever that might be, we need to be able to foster that and to be able to make sure that they have the power to do the job that they need to do. And so oftentimes I see white supremacy looking like, a write-up for something that is really another colleague would not be written up for, or I see nitpicking, I see different things that, certain other colleagues would not be accused of or nitpicked on. And so I just want to bring that up, that, we talk about diversity, we talk about representation, but oftentimes if that place is not going to be a place of belonging for that person, it's not sustainable. And it won't be sustainable until the organization practices what that means. So sometimes it looks like that too. And, if we talk about bridge building, then we need people that look like us in positions of power. So many of it starts on the ground with our petitions and our protests, but a lot of it starts at the top too.
Thank
You
you,
bet.
Ms.
You bet.
Santoro.
You bet. I'm known for just cutting through the tape. And I think that an evidence of what Janine may be referring to, and Mr. Reynolds wants action, but there are things that we as a people, and you notice, the white supremacists have kind of stayed away. I laugh about the signs on my front yard that says "No hate here," go someplace else. But we haven't seen an influx of, at least to my knowledge, of these things being posted in Bethlehem. But they're over in the township because, according to Randy Blau, who was on earlier, they're posting signs over there for the Jews and the blacks. Now, Rabbi Singer, has reported those to us in committee from, and I don't know that they were done in Bethlehem per se. But what I want to mention specifically is that the variety of things that I see that are so open to people that want to think they're having corrective action and including minorities in their groups. What they're doing, they organize a subgroup to make us feel comfortable. And I'm going to give a for instance, because I know of this one, openly. I like a Chamber of Commerce. I don't know in Harrisburg if you have them. Here we have a Chamber of Commerce, and I don't know the differences, but we have a Black Chamber of Commerce and we have a Latino Chamber of Commerce. What is the purpose of the three? Now you tell me if that isn't a direct evidence of wanting to stay individualized and be happy in your own place. I don't think anybody thinks about it because they feel like, they can keep us all working and happy in our place. So what does the Chamber of Commerce, the grandfather, what is he doing that the kids can't do? Who are the Puerto Ricans and the African Americans? Someone needs to tell me what that's all about. But that's what's been going on. I live in Bethlehem, so I can't tell you what's going on anywhere else. But that is what has inhabited the city of Bethlehem for years. That we should be so content here. That I should not want my grandchildren to work in Bethlehem. I shouldn't want them to do that. They had to go. I got grandsons that are in two different states. Not because they want to be, but because that's who requisitioned them for a job. Bethlehem has turned its back on people for years, but it was Bethlehem, And so what I'm trying to generate is that the depths of people's thinking is that the resentment of one another is so deep-seated that even if we sign a petition and say I'm against hate, and then the next day, do something to the contrary, who's to know that? And as we go about, and all these organizations are organized in the name of good, and then we continue on our merry way. How are we going to accomplish this end? And I understand with our Mayor-elect Reynolds is talking about the action, but the action is going to have to come from people. Even in our schools, I've talked to you about our schools. If we really wanted something to happen, we wouldn't have our schools loaded down with special ed kids. There's no jobs out there for them. But who's worried about that? Okay, I'm off. Wait, Mary, I see. Go ahead. Go ahead, Stacy.
I was just going to say those are great points, and I'm glad that you spoke about it because we do need people advocating. That is something that PHRC, advocates for, and we would love to collaborate with you all in that endeavor as well as some others. And if you want to comment before I move on, go ahead, Mrs. O'Connor.
No, I think Esther has said it all, and I'm white and right behind her.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we're going to move on to, and this question was identified for either mayor. And I'll start with a response that was given by Executive Director Chad Dion Lassiter. But the question is, what role does government play in addressing the surge of white supremacist activity? And we've talked at length about white supremacy and how we can address that. And Executive Director Lassiter just said that government and Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission is a government state agency, state level government agency. And the role that we have is to address it in the form of no hate, in our state town halls such as this. So this is just one of the ways that we're here to help and assist different agencies advocate. And if anyone wants to add, I would love to hear your responses as well. So let's start with either the outgoing mayor or the.
I'll make a point if I may.
Thank you.
I want to go back. Thank you. I want to go back to what the lieutenant said, because I think all of us, part of this panel today, obviously, are looking at the same issues. But I think, community education and community support are very, very important, and having forums and discussions. But I think there's a point here where we're seeing a void. And in the Lehigh Valley, our two newspapers, the Express Times and the Morning Call, in my opinion, are really becoming almost non-existent. Not everyone gets their news from social media. Not everyone gets their news on the digital platform. And I think when you look at the content that's being covered by both newspapers, they're not really talking about local news anymore. And there was a forum by the chamber last week or 2 weeks ago with the two editors. And it was basically, the discussion was, what's the role of local newspapers? As their circulation declines, more and more people in our community, and I'm only going to speak about Bethlehem and the Lehigh Valley, they're not getting local news. They don't know what's going on in the community or in government. They don't attend governmental meetings. And I think that's a slippery slope. We can't get the message out. Not everyone's in tune with social media. So I think that's an issue that we're going to have to address, because I see it getting worse in the future. I don't know how it is in Harrisburg, but I know in the Lehigh Valley here, it seems like governmental meetings and government and important community issues are really not being covered the way they should be covered, or the way they were covered just about 5 or 6 years ago. When you look at the number of employees by the Express Times and the Morning Call, it's just basically a shell of what they were 5 or 10 years ago. And I think that we're heading down a dangerous slope, because we're not getting news that the public should be aware of. And that's goes back to community education, community support. How do you do that when we don't have that local media?
I would say that that's a problem nationwide. And I'm looking here to the side in the chat, and Miss O'Connor had even brought that up well before you even came on and eloquently stated what you just said. And she said social media plays a major role in the problems that we're seeing. And I could agree. So to be honest with you, I think that's something that we all need to think about and try to tackle. I think you're spot on. I think Ms. O'Connor's spot on. So thank you. Mayor-elect Reynolds, would you like to add?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts here. One is that I think one of the things that we need to do is, those of us that are in positions of authority in institutions, is we need to take the strongest institutional wide stance we can on these issues. There are 579 employees that work for the city of Bethlehem. There's no reason why all 579 employees shouldn't be able to sign the petition that says we are no place for hate. I don't think your question is if the 3 people on here or the 4 people on here, between the chief, myself, Ms. Santoro, or Mr. Donchez, are the ones that believe that. But we've seen what happens when school boards or other institutions even start to wade into these issues. And one of the most proactive things that we can do before anything comes up is that we can show people in our community who look at our institutions, our school boards, or our school districts, our cities, our municipalities, what is the our churches, what is the institutional stand that you're taking? What are you saying by saying that equity is a real thing? And I want to take a step back too to what Miss Lee had said, is we like to talk about our history in Bethlehem, but there is a dark side to our history. For a long time, Bethlehem Steel would not hire African Americans, which is why our population of African Americans is lower than Allentown or Easton. For a long time, people couldn't live in the city of Bethlehem that weren't Moravians. We have this history, even where we look at where we built low income housing on the outskirts of city. And I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to admit those things. We need to admit that those decisions that have been made decades over the past hundreds of years has partly led to what Miss Lee referred to in 2021 as that distrust and things like that. So we acknowledge that history, we acknowledge that past, and then we take a look. What are the actions that our institutions can take? Not the mayor saying this is right or this is wrong. What is it that we can show everybody in our city, in our community, that when you take a look at the city of Bethlehem from A through Z, 1 through 579, we all reject a certain type of white supremacy and discrimination and things like that. We've seen what has happened, the people that have come out of the shadows to complain about school districts doing that. Those are conversations that are difficult to have for communities, but we need to take the strongest stance possible. And the last thing I would say is if you go back to what Rabbi Singer had said before, these conversations that he talked about in our community, they need to happen in our community, and they need to happen in other people's living rooms, in other people's energy, in spaces that we are not the ones dictating it. It's great if we're having those meetings in City Hall, if we're, but we can't be the ones that are dictating where those conversations are going on. Because even where we have those conversations is implicitly about power, implicitly about who gets to make the decisions. So part of what we need to do is completely kind of rethink the way that we're going to organize those conversations and kind of rethink exactly what we mean when we're talking about equity and issues such as those.
Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds. Kate, how do I call her? Stacy.
Yes.
Recently, and Mr. Reynolds probably knows this, I read it in the newspaper where I think our president of council made a statement that residents don't respond to community issues. But we don't have, and I did call the newspaper and responded to that statement that there is no such vehicle where we have community meetings where we can express our opinions about issues that are happening to happen in the city. We don't have those kinds of sessions. So I'll take this opportunity to go on record as saying that we're part of the community, but we don't have a community voice out there as such to talk about, like, for instance, we have these high rises that are going up, and maybe at inception, if community had more of an input on this discussion in that regard, the lack of neighborhoods, and I've spoken about this. It's like our neighborhoods are going away. Pretty soon we won't know where the South Side is because it's going to be all filled up with high rise. So, those kinds of things, but we haven't had, as community people, we haven't had much say about what goes on in the city. And 5 minutes at a council meeting to give your view on something is not the answer, in my opinion, but we do have to I agree with Mr. Reynolds that we have to get to the nuts and bolts of what goes on in regard to us as a people. And we have to do that in another way.
Well, I think this is a perfect time for me as the moderator to just read a comment that was offered in chat by Ms. Joanne Tosti-Vasey. She's actually the chair of Center County's Advisory Council. It's an advisory council that serves as an advisor to us. And Ms. Tosti-Vasey had said that local government in her area, Center County, actually had a vital role in overturning having Native American mascots, using the derogatory term Indian, and using that image to negatively depict Native American people. So I think part of what can be done is to have people who are involved run for office and actually be proactive or active in addressing these issues that show hate, show bias. So I think that's one other way as well. I think that Ms. Santoro has her work cut out for her as the diversity and equity and inclusion person. But I think there's a number of ways that we can address those. And thank you, Ms. Tosti Vasey, for offering up a way that you've addressed an issue in your community. So I want to ask Rabbi Singer or anyone else, if you wouldn't mind speaking about anti-Semitism that has occurred in Bethlehem and what steps you've taken to address that. Because we're talking about bias in general, but we want to give people the opportunity to talk about things that they've seen as well.
Yeah, so anti-Semitism takes many forms, some of which is overt and some of which is found in lots of different places. So I'll give you a couple of examples of things that have happened here in the community. So our kids go to various different schools within the Bethlehem area and also the Bethlehem Township as well. We had an incident now, I guess, a few years ago that I brought to the Bethlehem Advisory Council, where our students, one of our students said that there were people, practicing Heil Hitler, and whenever Holocaust education came up in school, would say it's all your fault that we have to learn all this boring stuff, and they were targeted for that. We even had a teacher in Saucon Valley School District receive a lump of coal and basically told, hey, do you want a ham sandwich? And things like that. The synagogue received hate mail in 2016. We are a polling place. We've been a polling place for 30 years. We were receiving hate mail before the election in 2016. And there was a Unite the Right rally that was scheduled for two places in Pennsylvania, one in a place called Newcastle, Pennsylvania, I think near Pittsburgh, and one right here in Bethlehem. And they had scheduled to have this rally after Charlottesville, right here, a few miles from the synagogue. And I remember we currently, because of of what happened in Pittsburgh and because of the rise in anti-Semitism, which has exploded across the country, we have an armed guard at our services. We have Homeland Security. We get FBI briefings every week from SCAN, which is a community network. We have an app on our phones called Octopus that alerts us when there's been an incident at any of the synagogues in the community or the Jewish Community Center. Our Jewish Community Center in Allentown received bomb threats. There were people who would come, and when I did a funeral in Fountain Hill, literally we were coming off the hill to the road, and a car came by and started screaming anti-Semitic things out the window at someone who just lost her mother, like in the midst of all of that anti-Semitism in that way. We see it both in schools. We saw it like I said, at our universities and colleges here, incidents occurring. In fact, like I said, this week at Lafayette College, anti-Semitic swastikas were put into the elevator. When I was teaching there, there were incidents of not just anti-Semitism, but hate in general. And we experience this as you heard from Randy before, the flyers that are coming around, against the African-American community and against the Jewish community. So we see that as well. And, it all filters down. There's the national sort of vibe that you hear, like Jewish space lasers that are starting fires in California. If you can, I mean, it's just so ridiculous, but there are people that believe that we're behind COVID and we're behind this and we're behind that, just like in the Asian community, there were accusations of that, same in the Jewish community. And it's sort of all of these white supremacy ideas and anti-Semitism, they filter out through. And just, the history that was in this city, the synagogue had an arson attack when we had our synagogue on the south side. We had issues where you couldn't get a room in the Bethlehem Hotel. They wouldn't, if you were Jewish, right? You get bullied. We had to start our own basketball teams, our own things, because we weren't really accepted within the larger community. So there's been a lot of progress, but there's also been this resurgence over the last few years of this really virulent anti-Semitism. Some of it, again, words and flyers and things of that nature and things at school, but a lot of it also, unfortunately, we've seen it turn violent, like you saw in Pittsburgh. And that is something that our synagogue, we're becoming much more of a fortress. Many other houses of worship don't have to worry about this. They don't even think about having armed guards or security cameras or putting sheeting on their windows to stop bullets or at least prevent the glass from shattering, panic buttons, drills. I have a tourniquet kit. We had to actually have how to use tourniquet. I didn't need that till I was in the Navy. That's when I learned how to use a tourniquet. Now, once again, we're back here where we have tourniquets and panic buttons. This is a problem. This is not the way we want to live. It's not the way we should have to worry about. What do you wear a kippah and you walk outside? What kind of thing? If our kids try to wear a yarmulke or a kippah on their heads, what do they feel if they walk into school? These things need to be addressed. And so I would say the solution to some extent is education and community building. The stronger we are coming together and building those bridges of having a community voice together, of experiencing each other, then those barriers, I hope, of hate will come down. And for those who are going to insist on hate, they have to know that the vast majority of people in Bethlehem will not stand for it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And if Lieutenant Slayton would like to speak about any efforts the Heritage Division at this time, would you like to comment about the efforts that the Heritage Division has underway?
Yeah, again, education component. We're teaching community members as well as law enforcement officers about the different cultures, and how to investigate hate crimes and how to recognize them. And it sounds like the rabbi is doing all the right things. He's taking all the precautions, available to him, which he should not have to do. But he is doing all the right things. And I'm sure he's probably had some, but we as the state police offer resources for churches and synagogues to help better secure them. So Rabbi, I'm sure you probably had that assessment, but if you have not, yeah, I'll see him nodding his head. So we do offer resources to help protect places of worship and things of that regard. But again, I responded to the Tree of Life Synagogue shooting when it happened. I was in this office and it was a horrendous scene, horrendous. And no community should ever have to be subjected to anything like that. And just to reiterate, education, community support, community building, and show that these instances and this hate propaganda, it's not going to be tolerated in the community. When it's disseminated, hopefully the community comes together, a matter of days after and denounces it and says they're not welcome here. And then the instances of these people, these white supremacists, will be less inclined to spread that hate in the future. Once that community shows that vigorous support, they're going to say, you know what, my message was not well received here. I'm not getting the attention I was looking for. Let me go elsewhere. So that's what it comes down to: education. And they're afraid of other people because they don't know them. They don't understand other people. They don't understand the Jewish faith. They don't understand the Asian American community. and they don't understand the pandemic and things of that sort. So it's just ignorance that causes this fear and a lack of education. So again, once we educate them, then they may recognize, okay, maybe maybe I'm not right to hate this person. This person is my brother. This person is my sister. Doesn't matter if they're Jewish, Asian, African American, Hispanic. Doesn't matter. We all have the same motives in life to to prosper and do well for ourselves and our families. And these other individuals, they're no different than us. So again, education, community support. Again, it's a shame that the rabbi has to take those precautions, but he's not the only one throughout the state taking those precautions. And we as the Pennsylvania State Police, we're going to do everything possible to support houses of worship, as well as communities impacted by hate and bias.
Thank you, Lieutenant Slayton. And just to add to that, we work in step with the Anti-Defamation League as well. And again, we'd be happy to assist in any way with anyone. And that would be, that's something that we would like to extend to everyone. I would agree, just as Lieutenant Slayton and a lot of other people had said, that this is really a thing with educating. I applaud Mayor-elect Reynolds for having someone on staff, starting, with your term, who's going to address diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it is indeed a matter of ignorance and not knowing, fearing what is unknown. And a big part of DEI is not only, embracing commonalities, it's actually celebrating what is different. And I think that when we move past that ignorance and start to embrace and celebrate how we are actually different instead of fear that difference, we'll be better off for it. So thank you all. President Lee, at this time, I'd like to just extend you the opportunity to give any remarks or offer anything that you would like, because I know we discussed that this afternoon. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, listen, Stacy, I'm appreciative to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission for, assisting and having this extended discussion over the subject. And I think the more we talk about it, education truly is the key. Ignorance is the reason. And, I've lived this long and, it hasn't eradicated itself as of yet. And so we'll give it a little more time. And, I applaud our mayor-elect as he goes forward. I'm thankful to Mayor Donches, who affords us the opportunity to bring this group together where we can discuss, the issues at hand. I think we're no worse off, because we're operating and functioning together, and I hope that Mayor-elect Reynolds will allow us to continue. I think he probably will, but it's a means to get 22 people to unleash monthly, things that are bothering us, and to attack topics in our community that need addressing. We don't attack them, we address the problems and come together. Our police, there are things that we just can't allow to take for granted. We live in a community where we all know one another. Bethlehem has always been a community that knows one another. And Mayor Reynolds is elect is right. This is a Moravian community that we grew up as young Black kids. And we were all taken care of educationally fairly. It is only when we graduated from high school that trouble started. And so we're now trying to find out how we can make our way. We don't want our kids to have to go through the same thing we went through. So hopefully, I think everything we're doing is right. Mayor Donches is a school teacher, Mayor-elect Reynolds, school teacher. We're on the right track, and everybody in the world, is a Christian. God forbid. Everybody's been praying. I don't know why situations aren't better. That's a joke. Everybody just get the feel of what I'm saying, because if we're all Christians and we're on bent knees for all these years, God knows Bethlehem should be in better shape. We are not in the worst. But I am so thankful for those of you who serve and give your very best. And we'll continue. I've talked to Stacy up in Harrisburg about some support helps for our things that I see going awry. And I'll say it publicly, in our school system, things that we don't have money for directly here. But we don't need money to take care of everything. There's some things that we as individuals can do. It's just like this hate. We can do that without costing money. Just search our hearts. So I'm going to leave it there. And I'm thankful to you, Stacy, to Mr. Lassiter for even coming forward and on addressing this situation. We know our state's not asleep. We didn't request you to come after us. You saw the article in the news media and addressed it. And I thank you for that.
You're very welcome. And I just want to give kudos to our communications director, because she's very active in forwarding that information to us all. So thank you, Director Archie Wright, because she's vital in that effort as well.
Great.
And again, thank you all. I know you all have busy schedules. I'm just very just enthusiastic, and I just feel as a new person to my role. I don't think you all know that I've recently rejoined the commission September 20th. So I haven't even been on the job for 3 months. So Sure, go ahead.
First of all, I do want to congratulate you. As Stacy just said, if you realize she's only been here, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And I think you did a stellar job in not only putting this together, but also in facilitating. The subjects aren't easy, and you did a great job in keeping everyone on track. But I also just wanted to add one thing that I think speaks to what Lieutenant Slayton had said about educating the community. And I think it speaks to the organizational systemic issues that we talked about, is the training that we provide. I know the state police also provides some services, but the unconscious bias training really is a great place to start for those people who just aren't aware that white supremacy comes in many different forms. And that can be a great place, very non-threatening, to start to talk to people and kind of meet them where they are. It's kind of, to me, that's the program that really gives people the aha moment, like, oh, I didn't realize that I was thinking that way, or that was a hurtful thing to say, and gives them a little bit of ways to start to change their behaviors in a non-threatening way. So PHRC provides that to school administrators, even to police departments, to in a community setting, to civic groups. So I just want to have an open invitation to all of you. If you see a need for that, Stacy would be awesome and come, and her or someone else from our staff would be able to facilitate that for you in many different settings. And the other thing is, it's not cookie cutter. If you tell her or tell us that you'd really like to kind of steer it in a certain direction, we can do that. So
and Laura,
I just kind of wanted to put that out there. Sorry.
Yes, and if you don't mind, I see that Chairman Bolstein, who is on the call as well, had put in the chat. He just said thank you to everyone on behalf of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, that is. And he introduced himself as the chair, and he just wanted you all to know we are here to help. So like Laura said, like Chairman Bolstein said, we have a variety of trainings, including but not limited to implicit bias training, as does PSP, Pennsylvania State Police. And from my understanding, we've actually trained together in step with PSP. So any way that we can assist, we are definitely here to assist.
Stacy, can we get copies of this presentation?
Yes,
How will we get a?
we'll email you a link. Stacy
Okay,
will email you a link.
All right,
Mhm.
super, super. And then the
Okay.
chat information, I noticed, I can't see that close. But there were several chat comments.
Yes.
Can we access those as well?
Yes, we can. As
Yeah.
long as it's recorded, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's recorded. And I read as much as I could presently, but you'll be able to see it in its entirety once you get the recording.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Okay,
So-
super.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Ms. Ching,